Hi, everybody. So yeah, as he said, I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about trying to see past disability and all that to try and include us in the development of your products, whether it be an app or a platform. So we can go first to my first slide here about who I am, because I think most of you don't know who I am. So if we could go to the next slide. Yeah, there. So anyway, I was born with autosomal congenital cataracts, which is a fancy way of saying I was born blind. And at the time when I was born, back in 1990, the treatment for cataracts for small children wasn't as it was, or as it is today. So there was no way to get those removed, so I grew up almost completely blind. I played, however, a lot of games as a kid. I played a lot of Nintendo and also Nintendo 64. I would say gaming, other than music, gaming was my biggest hobby as a kid. And I moved to Finland in 2011, and in 2015 I started working for Nopia, who at the time just did animation. They didn't do any games, but it was sort of on the horizon and something that we all kind of thought would be fun, though I can honestly say I never saw myself working in the game industry. I never studied game design or anything like that. So when I started working at Nopia and I began to work on game projects, of course the elephant in the room was always that I couldn't necessarily see what was happening or couldn't even necessarily play some of the demos that we had been working on because they just weren't accessible. So in 2016 I started giving little speeches here and there at schools and things like that about accessibility and things that people could do to make their games more approachable to people with not just visual disabilities, but other impairments as well. And aside from games, I've had a little bit of success in Finland as a Eurodance artist under the name MC Felicia. My song was used on a Finnish TV show last winter called Putous, and I've done some gigs with some Finnish Eurodance artists like Waldo's People and Movatron and so on. And the next slide, if it's possible, does this work? Oh yeah. So there I am on the cover of one Finnish newspaper talking about the game scene in Satakunta where we're located, and the other picture there is just from a recent gig I had this summer with Lasco, the Belgian Eurodance artist. So, and the next slide is a picture from a show I actually wrote, which is Nopia's current project, Alvin from Earth. You guys might have seen our cardboard cutouts out there on the indie track. What makes this series a little bit different is that it's going to be as accessible as possible. So we're going to ultimately have customizable subtitles and descriptive audio, which basically means every action that happens on screen, there will be a narrator telling what that action was. So if someone picks up a bottle, the narrator will say, Alvin picked up a bottle, and so on. So even if you have no vision whatsoever, you can still follow along. And so to the next slide. I've got some fun facts, and a lot of these might seem like really obvious things, but I think it's important to state, first and foremost, that disabled people are people. I know that's crazy, but I can't see you guys if you raise your hands, but hopefully someone can tell me. I'd like anyone to raise your hand. How many of you have actually met a blind person that isn't me?
Probably half the room.
Okay. How many of you have met people with other impairments, so the people in wheelchairs or people who walk with canes or so on?
80% of the room.
How many of you have never actually interacted with a disabled person? You've seen them, but you've never actually spoken to one.
Nobody in the room.
Okay, so that's good. But believe it or not, I have had situations where I am the first person with a disability that someone's ever met. And then it's a bit awkward because you're standing there and they're terrified to say words to you because, I don't know, do they think we're going to be offended or I'm going to be offended or what, but they're just absolutely terrified. So disabled people are people. You can talk to us, and we have lives. We have families, we have hobbies, we do things. Our lives are not centered around the fact that we can't do everything that an abled person can do. And furthermore, disabilities are not always permanent or long-term. So any one of you guys could have fallen at the party last night and, broken your arm or injured your eye in some way, and you would be temporarily unable to do the things that you normally do. How many of you would stop playing games if you couldn't use both of your hands for 2 weeks, or if you had to wear an eye patch for 2 weeks? Would you stop playing games completely? I don't think so. So it's kind of the point that you're not just kind of targeting these things for specific people, but you're targeting for anyone in a situation. And I need to look at my notes here to see where I actually am right now. Yeah, and disabled people are not sort of either one demographic either. We are all different ages, all different skill sets, all different ethnicities, races, sexualities, and so on. So we are a large kind of umbrella group hiding in the shadows always. And we have money, which seems like an obvious thing to say, but it's true. Many of us have jobs or sources of income, and we would like to spend our money. So when it comes to products and so on, we're going to choose the ones that work for us, and we're going to be very loyal to the companies and to the services that we know take us into consideration. A good example of that for me would be Netflix. There's a wide array of things on Netflix, or series and movies that have descriptive audio. Similarly, in games, I always tend to gravitate towards the ones that have kind of thought ahead about people who can't see so well enjoying their product. And yesterday was quite interesting. We can go to the next slide. Yesterday was quite interesting as I walked around here and tried to play some of the demos. I came to a really lovely group of guys and just asked them, do you have any accessibility features? And the poor guy froze. He froze. He's like, no, actually, I hadn't even thought of that. And I was like, well, this is uncomfortable. So I think part of it is people are nervous that it's going to be expensive, or it's going to be the kind of thing where they're not going to be able to deliver on anything that we want. But in being afraid of that, by not talking to anyone, not consulting anyone, whether they be blind or deaf, or if you're making a location-based game, maybe consulting someone in a wheelchair or with difficulties walking, by not contacting anyone at all, you're actually setting yourself up to be in a very awkward situation when it comes time to demo and beta test and so on, because you might have someone who's got really great ideas, really great insight, who would be a valuable resource for your company, a financial asset in the long run, who can't enjoy your product whatsoever. So I know part of it is a lot of people don't know where to go. They don't know who to speak to. They don't even know what to put into Google when thinking about, consultation of the disabled or accessibility testing or so on. But it's really important to think about. And I have to, So the other thing I've heard a lot from people, even in my own circle, is that it's expensive. And it can be expensive if you think about it at the very end. As I said before, if you've got an almost finished product or almost finished demo, and then you start thinking, oh yeah, maybe I would like to make this easier for people who can't see to play or for people who are deaf to play, but you've already got something that's already finished. So of course it's going to be very expensive to go back through all the code and fix things and edit and so on. But when you think about things from day one and you say, we've got this great platform and we want it to be accessible to everybody who could possibly spend money on it. We want to make as much money as possible from anyone, regardless of whether or not they can see or can't see, walk and can't walk. If you think about it like that from day one, it becomes a natural part of the budget and not an extra, because my money should not be extra, and the money of disabled people should not be extra money. It should just be money, because as I said before, you never know who is going to be temporarily disabled and who is permanently disabled. Accidents happen, things happen, we play sports and injure ourselves, we make mistakes and so on. So it's not always this horrible, scary thing that only affects a small part of the group. And furthermore, on that same line, features you put into a product for people with disabilities might actually end up being enjoyed by people in the general population. A good example of this is subtitles. Anyone here who can see and who has children who sleep very lightly knows how important subtitles are and how essential subtitles are. Or, if you've not got children, anyone here who's a loud eater and likes to watch Netflix while they eat can also appreciate subtitles. So even though you might have no trouble whatsoever with your hearing, there are any number of reasons why you might enjoy subtitles. Similarly, if you think about things for the visually impaired, for example, larger text or more color contrast, if you're in bad sunlight trying to play a game or trying to use your phone, those things that were made for people with much worse vision than you are now benefiting you. Location-based games. I'm a very avid player of Pokemon Go myself, and when I think about myself sometimes having trouble playing alone because, you know, a gym, for example, where there's a legendary raid might be in a really difficult location for me to get to alone, by just slightly expanding the radius even, or being aware of where you have your kind of ports or gyms or whatever, expanding the radius to make it so that you can be far enough away to make it accessible but still be able to play. These are little things that help anybody. And because I'm blind, I have to check my phone again to see where I'm at. So yes, we can go to the next slide. Do not fear input from the disabled, and do not be afraid to ask them questions or consult, because I can assure you that no one is going to be offended. The surefire way to offend the disabled community, in my personal opinion, would be to ask us nothing and completely leave us out. And then once you've gone to market with your product or your game or your app, say, oops, sorry, guess you guys can't enjoy that. This thing that's now huge that everyone is doing, you can't be a part of. Inclusivity is very important for us. Isolation among disabled people is a very real problem for any number of reasons, whether it be because our social skills are impaired because of our disability or just because we are shy and so on, which is a very big problem. So the inclusivity of gaming is one thing that's very important, and I really hope that if you take anything away from anything I've just said, it's that inclusivity is key. And yeah, disabled people, again, we're not out to make you feel bad. No one wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to make developers cry. It's more than that. We want to be involved. We want to help you make things better for everybody. And it doesn't have to be expensive if you plan it out well and if you consider it from day one. It's going to be very expensive if you don't start thinking about it until the very end. Of course, some of you are probably sitting here shaking, thinking, oh my God, our game is going out next week and I've only now thought of this. It happens, but I would hope that next time round, when you're developing something, if you're already in the early stages of developing your next game or your next product, from day one, you would think about, okay, how can we make this accessible? What kind of consultation is out there? And to, in general, not fear working with people with disabilities. In general, we are very easy. Of course, some of us might need help getting around the office or finding you and so on. But when it comes down to doing our work, I would say that we are no different than anyone else in terms of motivation. Some of us might be more motivated than others. Some of us might have a harder time waking up in the morning than others. But, oh, I just got really loud. So, yeah, in short, trust us. We are here to help you, and we are not scary, I promise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is kind of really important stuff. I mean, particularly when, like you say, things like subtitles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Ian Richardson, talks about this a lot as well. I mean, things like the idea of, you know, using definitive shapes that are much easier for people with partial sight to be able to, you know, pick out, but also happen to be really convenient, particularly for people who are colorblind or even just, you know, general users who can actually then see that thing more readily, differentiate from the other things around.
Colorblindness actually affects in the UK, was it 12% of males?
Yeah, exactly.
And a colleague of mine, Ian Hamilton, who spoke at PGC a couple of years ago, we were together here in Finland at Aalto University back in April, and he actually said when Candy Crush changed their system, they took away, I guess, I've never played Candy Crush, so I don't know, but he said that they took away differentiated shapes, so then it was all color-based, and apparently they lost basically all revenue from people with color blindness from there on out because the game became unplayable. So color blindness even is a disability when it comes to playing games.
Yeah, I misspoke. I got the surname right. It's Hamilton. You're right.
Yeah.
So Ian's fantastic.
He's lovely.
Well worth talking to.
Lovely.
And is very, very straightforward. He's got huge numbers of tips that are well worth checking out. And, you know, the same thing applies in terms of like audio. You know, realizing, you know, how you make things distinctive. So, anyone got any questions?
Please ask.
There's a question right at the back.
Hi. I was just thinking about what kind of things help you in the development process, for instance. Is there something the team can take into consideration from your like point of view?
Just talk to me, or not even me. It doesn't have to be me, of course, I'm busy. But talk to talk to blind people from day one. Everyone is going to kind of have their own system when it comes to testing and consulting, but I think at the end of the day, you're probably going to get very similar information from regardless of who you ask. So I would say just ask if you've got something that you're not sure about in general. Just ask. There's never such a thing as too many questions or even bad questions. So it's hard to say, like, abstractly, in theory, what I could do better for a thing I haven't seen before. But just send an email to someone or do a quick Google search about what other people in your situation have done. There's a lot of resources online now, if you research accessibility and inclusivity of the disabled in gaming, that are really good. It's a lot of reading. I understand people are busy, they don't have time, but read or have something read to you. It's very important.
Thank you.
I think it's also in terms of like, the more we have people who love games, who happen to have a disability in the team, the more perspectives we have anyway, which is inherently valuable.
I have worked on a project in the past where I wasn't consulted on the disabled aspect of the game, and then I was asked to show the game. So here I am at a festival showing a game, and people are asking me, well, how do I play this? And I had to say, well, actually, I know how to play it, but I can't see, so you'll have to figure it out on your own. And I was part of the team. But every time I sort of tried to speak up and say, hey, this is a bit of a problem, I said, no, later. And in the long term, it made the team I was part of look quite silly.
And on that note, I'm afraid we're going to have to call it quits. Hopefully you'll be around.
I will be at my table. Just look for the cardboard cutouts and come and ask me. Again, there is no such thing as stupid questions. And as long as you don't insult my mother, you can't possibly offend me. My mom is a saint.
Cool. So I'll help you through.